Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In last week's video, I dove deep into foods that I was very intentional and specific about eating and consuming after I did my water fasting and while I was going through chemotherapy. I shared a lot of information in terms of the benefits of those items and why I was so intentional about it. In this week's video, I wanted to dive deeper into the actual food items that I chose not to eat. And so, although they are, it's not as many, the list isn't as long as you may be imagining that it could be. However, there were, some specific items, some specific food choices that I chose to stay away from, to avoid while I was going through chemotherapy. And to be honest, even till this day, I still don't consume a lot of them, or it's at a very reduced amount compared to before I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Okay, so let's get into it. When I was diagnosed and started treatment for breast cancer, I had an opportunity to speak with a registered dietitian. This person was assigned to me as part of my multidisciplinary team that included my doctors, the fertility doctor, the social worker, and again, like I said, a registered dietitian. I had a great conversation with the registered dietitian. She was very good about sharing the importance of eating small, frequent meals a day, at least 4 to 5 meals a day. She included the importance of making sure that I had protein and carbs with every meal. She told me the importance of drinking plenty of water with every meal. And obviously, if you watched the previous video, then you know I did water fasting, and I definitely met my water goals with every meal or every day. But again, these are some of the things that she shared that I thought was, incredible, and it was all really good information. She, basically explained the importance of eating a well-balanced, healthy meal while you're going through chemotherapy to help reduce the amount of side effects and to, ultimately keep you feeling good, because if you feel good, you'll do good, obviously, right? And so with all of that, I immediately, as I received that information and I knew all of that was great information, I immediately noticed that there was no mention on what foods to not eat while going through chemotherapy, what foods to not eat while you're dealing with a cancer diagnosis. And so, like I said, this was obvious that, she didn't mention it. I even asked specifically, what type of food should I not eat while going through chemotherapy? What foods should a person diagnosed with breast cancer avoid while they're going through that journey? And to be honest, there wasn't a lot of foods that was mentioned. There wasn't a big reference in terms of what I should avoid, other than what I consider typical foods that you would tell a person who is pregnant that they should avoid. So, processed meats or sushi, raw seafood, unpasteurized cheese, undercooked meats. Again, these are all items that I felt was typical for a person who was pregnant. But what I was looking for was something more specific to a person that was going through a cancer diagnosis. While all of that information was great information, it was well received, great recommendations, it just wasn't what I was looking for at the time. I was looking for ways to, get through the diagnosis in the most healthy state that my body could be in. And I was looking for ways to reduce the idea of the cancer coming back, or ways to improve the overall treatment from the chemotherapy, because my body was in a better position to receive, the benefits of the chemotherapy and not help support the abnormal cells that were growing. And so again, it just wasn't the information I was looking for. Now, there are tons of research that are out there, research articles that are out there that do talk about how our foods, and certain foods, actually increase your risk of cancer, of breast cancer or colon cancer. It's just so much research that's out there that breaks down how some of the additives that are in the foods that we consume put us at an increased risk of developing mutations. What's crazy about this is that no one mentioned that. I think, any doctor that is helping a person that's on the battlefield is absolutely amazing. And I understand that the focus is definitely beating the cancer, treating the cancer, or whatever the case may be. So there's not like a huge focus from the provider specifically in terms of, diving into diet and nutrition and all of that. Like, their main goal is to keep you alive. So they just want you to eat. They're not focused on what you eat. But I would have expected a registered dietitian to be more open and more sharing in terms of, how we could make a better decision in terms of what we put in our bodies. And so with all of that being said, some of the items that I took it upon myself to research, and I made the executive decision that I was not going to consume it while I was going through chemotherapy, would include alcohol, red meat, shellfish, and refined sugar or sugar additives. And I'll break each one of these down and kind of my reason why I chose to avoid it. Okay, with alcohol, I had not been drinking alcohol at the time of the diagnosis. I was still breastfeeding, so I was still in that postpartum period. I don't believe in drinking alcohol and breastfeeding at the same time. And so again, I was not drinking during that time. I actually, like, if we go back and count the time period, like, it would have been before I was pregnant, like the last time that I had an alcoholic beverage. So with that being said, it wasn't a hard decision for me to cut out alcohol because I wasn't drinking it anyway. But I made it a point to not consume it, and particularly, not during that time while I was going through chemotherapy. And as we continued on, I just decided that I never wanted to drink it again because I had researched how it basically increased your risk for breast cancer and other cancers. So I just didn't think that that was beneficial for me. Alcohol can damage the DNA cells in your body. And when DNA cells are damaged, it ultimately leads to overgrowth of cells and mutations in cells. And so that increases the risk of cancer. And this can be cancer pretty much anywhere in your body with alcohol consumption. And so one of the reasons initially was like, okay, well, I don't want to drink alcohol because I know alcohol is going to affect my liver. It's going to affect my kidney. Chemotherapy is going to affect my liver. It's going to affect my kidneys probably. And so what I had told my husband and my family was that I didn't want to add two poisons in my body at once. It's crazy how we don't see alcohol as a type of, poison, but we see chemotherapy as the poison. I don't want the poison, but we'll drink alcohol. But in that moment, I saw both of them equally damaging or equally potentially damaging to my body. And I did not want to put the two together at the same time. And so going into the treatment, it was like, okay, yeah, I don't want alcohol because I don't want to put myself at an increased risk of having any issues with these organs that have to metabolize the chemotherapy. And I know how hard that's going to be on them. Moving forward, did all the research, learned about the potential, risk of it for different cancers, learned about how it damages DNA cells. And so I'm like, well, why are we drinking alcohol? That don't make sense. So just didn't seem beneficial to me. So went ahead and cut it out. Till this day, still don't drink alcohol. Next up was red meat. So red meat can, not all, can have harmful additives and hormones and things in it like nitrates and nitrites and all of that. And so what those do is basically increase your risk for cancer as well. So with that being said, you want to limit the amount of red meat that you consume if you consume it. And if you consume it, you want to make sure that that meat is organic or 100% grass-fed and doesn't have hormones and everything else that some farmers will use for, being able to produce more meat and provide more meat to this society that loves to eat meat. I'm not knocking anyone that loves to eat meat because obviously it's something, if I had to cut it out, it's something that I consumed as well. It's just that it's something that you want to limit. Okay, so that's red meat. Next is processed meats. Now, processed meats was somewhat of a little bit of struggle for me because I love a good deli sandwich. I love a good sub. And so processed meats are going to include your deli meats. That includes your bacon. That includes the sausages, especially breakfast sausages. So I'm a breakfast person that likes to do grits, eggs, sausage, biscuits, and all of that together because I think that like together, that's a great breakfast, right? Well, your sausages tend to be overly processed as well. And so with all of that being said, they are like loaded with different additives and things that basically increase your risk for cancer because they're added with things that help preserve their shelf life. And so if you need something to preserve something longer, then a lot of times that unfortunately puts you at an increased risk of developing cancer because what's used to do it. Now, of course, back in the old age, they went through processing things with using salts and things like that. And so that is a method that's used, but not for deli meats and, you know, some of the other items that we like to consume. And so some of the processed meats, because of the process, is not good for us. And so I made a decision to go ahead and cut it. I did not consume it while I was going through my chemotherapy. And to be honest, I still haven't dived back in. It is a struggle because, again, like as I'm trying to figure out like how to balance my breakfast meals, sometimes I'm like, well, you know, I don't have sausage or whatever. And so again, it's somewhat of a, you know, a learning curve that I'm on, but I don't, you know, regret the journey because I am trying to find all the ways that I can keep my risk of recurrence super low. And so if that means that I don't need to eat a deli sandwich, if that means that I don't need to have breakfast sausage, then that's just what it is. I'm not going to have it. And so those were things that I looked at as well, in terms of ways to improve my overall health and keep my body in its highest state to be able to do what it needs to do. Also, I did not mention this. If you look up processed meats and how it relates to cancer, processed meats are group 1 carcinogens. And so what that means is that there's research that actually shows that it does increase the risk or cause cancer, like group 1 carcinogen. So that means based off of this study, there has been enough numbers to justify the evidence that this causes cancer. And so all of that, you know, when you think about all of that, again, as inconvenient as it may be to not have this balanced breakfast or to not have a deli sandwich or sub, I mean, at the end of the day, if something is a known carcinogen, I don't want to be consuming it. And that's just that. So I cut those all the way out. Next will be the refined sugar and sugar additives. So what I learned was that cancer loves sugar. What I knew about myself was that I love sugar too. And so if cancer loves sugar and I love sugar, we both can't be loving sugar at the same time because this is not a good combination for my body overall. If the thing that I love is helping to fuel the cancer cells, that's a problem. And so during the journey, I decided to cut out refined sugar. Now that did not include natural sugars, meaning fruits. So apples, oranges, grapes, the berries that I talked about in the previous video, I still consume those because those came from the earth. And I do have the belief that overall, if it comes from the earth and it doesn't have like any type of negative effect on our body, meaning like it's not poison ivy, then we can naturally consume it and our body should naturally know how to break it down. However, when we get into refined sugars that are included in candy and cakes and pies and cookies and all the processed stuff that you shop for on the inside aisles or the things that are in the bakery, those are the items that I'm talking about. And so I love those. But again, cancer cells love those too. And so somebody got to give, and it was me, because what I didn't want was while I was going through treatments and taking chemotherapy, I did not want to continue to fuel the very substance that I wanted to eliminate. So at that time, I was taking chemotherapy to help eliminate the cancer cells, to reduce the cancer cells, to do its thing. And I didn't want to consume the sugar, the energy source for the cancer cell, and make that process harder. Like, I don't want chemotherapy to be in a battle fighting with cancer cells. Like, I want it to be able to get in there and win. Like, it's an unfair fight. You know what I'm saying? And so when it came down to me, that's how I saw it. That's how I viewed it. And it was an easy decision. Of course, I do have it in moderation. So meaning celebrations, birthdays, things like that. We don't have a birthday every month, so it's not even every month. However, I no longer shop for candy. I no longer stock my pantry with cakes and pies and cookies and all of those such. My kids don't even miss it. When we go to parties and stuff now, it is rare that my kids even ask for a slice of cake. It's rare that they even get a cupcake. And so what I came to realize is that it really doesn't matter because they don't care about it anyway. It was really just me the whole time. So here we are, and I cut it. Next will be shellfish. Shellfish was a little tough for me because I love oysters, I love clams. Yet, what I know about shellfish is that it is part of our ocean's filtration system. Shrimp and crabs, those are considered bottom feeders, and so they are cleaning up the ocean floor. The oysters and the clams are filtrating the waste and the pollutants of the oceans through their system. And so if they are filtering that through their system, then how I saw it as, if I'm eating the items that are filtering bad stuff, if I'm eating that stuff, then am I now putting my body in a position to now it has to fight and try to figure out how to get rid of this bad stuff? And so I just didn't think that was worth it. And so cut out shrimp, cut out oysters. Again, I love oysters. I love seafood. And so it is a struggle somewhat to be at a good restaurant and see oysters on the menu and not order some. And so it is a struggle. So I'll be honest, occasionally I do order some every now and then, but pre-diagnosis Zacobia would bust down a whole bushel of oysters alone. Like, I didn't need any help. And so although there are times when I will indulge, it is nowhere near how it was before the diagnosis. And while I was going through chemotherapy, I decided not to consume any of that at all. For originally, the first reason was because I like to eat oysters raw. I knew that having a reduced immune system because of the chemotherapy would potentially put me at risk for like a foodborne sickness or illness by consuming the raw oysters. I have consumed raw oysters for a very long time, and I've never had any type of illness or sickness from it. But I didn't want a chance that with a weakened immune system. And so that's kind of how I went into it initially. After that, then I dove into just really analyzing it and probably super analyzing it. I'm probably all far, over the fence with it. But again, it's what worked for me. This is not anything that I'm telling you have to do. I'm just sharing what worked for me during that time. And what worked for me was knowing that I wasn't putting anything back in my body that could potentially have something that could harm me in it. Okay. Ultimately, I made a lot of dietary changes along the way, and I will be sure to share all of those changes and what my lifestyle looks like now in another video very soon. It's a lot to uncover, and so I'm trying to be intentional about just kind of taking my time with that to be able to walk someone else through that process. But in discussing the decision that I made during that time while I was going through treatments to cut out things, it was hard for a lot of people to understand. I mean, most people didn't understand, so I got questions about it a lot. And ultimately, my goal was just to eliminate the chance of a recurrence, to eliminate the chance of, like I said, my body having to fight real hard to get rid of the mutated cells. My goal was to get rid of the mutated cells. And so that's how I looked at that approach. That's how I approached my diagnosis. And I think that's what helped give me the discipline to be able to go through it how I went through it. with all of that being said, yeah, that was it. That was how I focused. It doesn't include everything, but it's a good summary of how I handled it. Most of what I just discussed with you, I'm still on a very strict process with that. Like, I still don't trust sugar too much. I don't trust myself with sugar, too much. I still don't consume a lot of red meat. I still don't consume a lot of sweets. I don't buy candy. I walked in the grocery store last night and was like, nope, don't need that. That's not what I'm here for. And so that's what I do. I constantly remind myself that I don't need it. As much as I love it, I love my life more, and so I don't need it. The biggest thing is, like I said, with the alcohol, I still don't consume that. So yeah, that's it. So now that I've shared the foods that I avoided, I hope that this can help someone else. Again, this was not shared to diss or come down on anybody that loves to eat these kind of things. Like, y'all, please live your best life. Live your best life, because I'm definitely going to live my best life. And so these were all things that were important to me. And these are things that I felt like God placed on my heart that I needed to make a decision on. And so I made that decision. But if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. This video is really for anybody who may be internally like questioning whether or not they should or shouldn't. And so here's the viewpoint of someone who made the decision to not. And so whether that supports you on your journey or not, it's totally up to you. And so again, thank y'all for watching. Thank you for following me. If this has helped your life, please like, comment, share, subscribe. If you have made any dietary changes similar to mine, I'd love to hear your experience with it. If you've made other changes that I'm not aware of, share that in the comments as well, because I'm constantly trying to learn and know what I can and can't be doing to help live this long, beautiful life that God has given me. So I welcome any information that you guys can share. So thank y'all again. Like, comment, share. Please, let it help somebody else out. All right. Thanks.